So we find out those who are crossing border every time and every day. You can't find out a man carrying a basket ila ameweka tomato or sweet potato or bananas akicross. Almost find out ni wakina mama ndio wanafanya hiyo kitu. Men wanajihusisha na large trade. Right now hata taxes zenye Kenya inapata mingi sana kutoka katika hizi boda zetu ni small scale traders. Wale wanakuja kwa pamoja, collective buyers, na wanakodesa lori na wanavuka hapa kwa mpaka. They are women, not men. Janga la corona ili affect women so much kwa sababu mama ndiye anavuka mpaka akuje auze huku nyanya ndiye arudi. Na rules and condition ile our government, two governments walitoa kwamba nobody can cross border, na uangalie kwamba crossing border tulikuwa wamama wanatumia, kama hajatumia kubeba kwa kichwa anatumia mkokoteni or bicycles or motorcycles. Sheria ilitoka kwamba rules and regulations, no anybody can cross border except trucks. So all women who are doing cross border trade, all those women go back to the porous routes. Because I can't sit down and find my kids dying.
During this period of COVID they really tell us a lot about how the system works in the extreme conditions. So for example, having a lot of restrictions at the formal border crossing means that traders are going to use this other route, and there will be extraction and harassment. So that happens even when there's no COVID. But we saw that when the restrictions get to be so extreme that traders can't even cross, we saw the levels of extraction and harassment go up.
A huge number of traders agrees that the bribe really hurt their business, but they are forced. They have no any other alternative. They are forced to part with the bribe just to facilitate their trading experience.
Nielezea kidogo hali iliyochangia kwa sana. Kila mtu alikuwa anaona ni wakati wake wa kutafuta pesa sasa. Atoke kwa nyumba yake, aende kwa barabara, aharasi mtu apate pesa. Ilichangia sana sana. Mtu hata kutoka sehemu tuseme anaweza toka kama Kampala huko, anaamua kukuja kwa boda. Anajua sasa wakati wake wa kutengeneza imefika. Ilichangia sana sana.
So Sauti Africa is a social impact organization that leverages technology, mobile-based technology, to deliver trade and market information to small-scale cross-border traders. Additionally, we also provide a platform through which they can report maybe their experiences at the border, issues around corruption, issues around harassment. And we started to work together with Busara and Jackie based on the fact that we have some kind of expertise engaging with the cross-border environment.
The presence of Sauti with such an interesting and important platform created a real opportunity to make a contribution to our understanding of cross-border trade and the dynamics in much more detail, as well as engage traders and come up with ways we can fine-tune this tool to be creative around advocacy strategies. Reporting idea is different from just the traditional complaint mechanism. The reporting idea is that you've got thousands of traders reporting, and so you get aggregate information about what's going on at these borders every day. Getting this kind of aggregate information about the border conditions starts to create potentially an accountability dynamic and a pressure if you can link it to the next phase of the work is the strategy.
What we were thinking about was probably putting together this data, a lot of it, and then we share that data with the agencies that are actually involved in fighting for the rights of traders. So to that extent, maybe we can have more of evidence-based advocacy, because we do realize that a lot of the times, like people talk about corruption at the border, people talk about harassment at the border, but then there's no data to justify all those sentiments about corruption being present or maybe harassment really happening at the borders.
We found, for example, that women disproportionately dropped out of doing cross-border trading. But we also found some things that seemed a little surprising. For example, that men were disproportionately harassed because they were the ones who were taking the motorcycles and doing the transport. They seemed to also be facing higher levels of bribes. We really wanted to understand why we saw this kind of dynamic. And I think we found out more today.
Kuongezea kwa hiyo, these checkpoints zinakuanga kwa ungazetted routes only. Na ungazetted routes wenyewe, the government of on both sides zinatuambia they are ungazetted routes, but we don't understand venye wanaziita ungazetted routes when wenyewe wakiamuka asubuhi utapata hapa security agency ziko hapo na wanakuambia these routes are ungazetted, kumaanisha ya kwamba if they are ungazetted then wangezifunga, sababu na kama hawawezi zifunga inamaanisha kuna some source of income ambayo inapatikana pale, ambayo pengine wao wenyewe ndio wana-encourage kuja hapo na wana-share. Because leo mimi nakwambia ukweli, leo ukiwa askari na unapangwa pale na haupeleki returns kwa ule mwenye amekupanga, tomorrow you won't be there. I assure you. Hautakuwa pale. Sasa ile pia inatumika tu ni kama industry ya hii. Waache tu kusumbua sisi na kusema sisi ndio tuna encourage hizo vitu. They are the ones who are doing those things.
One of the people that was part of the conversation we're having really did mention that it would be great, ideally, if the government formalized those that they call ungazetted routes. So to me, that seemed like they're actually happy at doing their business and crossing the border formally. But maybe to some extent, the government is really not responsive to the needs of these people.
The ungazetted routes are actually ungazetted in theory, but the officials allows heavy police presence in the borders to continue manning the ungazetted routes just so that they can continue benefiting. So they close the formal borders but allow these ungazetted routes for their own benefits.
And one thing I really want to emphasize is that it appears that this COVID policy of closing the border to protect people was done in a way that never thought about how people needed to get food and how people needed to do this trade.
The assumption has always been that there is a high-level corruption in these panya routes, and like it's very, very expensive for traders to cross via the panya routes. And there's been a lot of attempts and initiatives just to move the traders from the panya routes to the border, to the official routes. But now here the traders are saying that it's actually cheaper for them in terms of the bribes they're paying.
I think it shows that there's still way too many burdens on small-scale traders going through the formal, including corruption, going through the formal border, and that the idea that small-scale traders were just misinformed and that's the reason they were using these ungazetted routes is not true. And I think we now have the data to see that.
So I guess maybe it's also important that even as we push through issues around reporting, and you see most of the time the reports we're talking about are not really good reports there, around corruption, around harassment, and you see corruption fights back really hard. So I guess maybe it's also important to explore areas around witness protection, so that at least even when they're reporting, we also sure that at least their safety is guaranteed.
It was very important to do what we just did with the traders, to explain what we found and try to explore ways to have impact, and also explore ways to give the information back, because we actually asked that question in the survey and they all said they wanted the results, and so we are working to do that. Well, I think when you have like survey results where we would listen to the traders, we heard them talk about trade information desks, then we asked almost 2,000 traders about the trade information desks, and they said most of us don't use them, but the people who use them, almost all, like so many of them, said they're really useful. So now we know that here's something incredibly simple that could empower traders. They're asking for it. we should be going back to COMESA, we should be going back to Trademark East Africa and say, why don't you have this? Look at all these traders that say they want it.
The communities are not aware of the existing policies in the region. The dissemination, localization of the policies is very low. In my opinion, I would recommend that even in the policy formation, let it be bottom up. Let the community contribute to the formation of the what? Of the policies. Secondly, let the policies be what? Localized, not in the foreign languages, in our local what? Languages for us to understand it fully. Then let it be disseminated. I believe there will be effective what? Implementation and everybody benefiting from the policies.
Like the challenges that you will find in the border of Busia, chances are high, will be the same challenges you'll find in the border of Taveta. It's the same challenge you'll find in the border of Rubavu. So it's just a case of like trying it out, ensuring it's working pretty well in one border, and then you can replicate it in some other places because the challenges really are the same, and the opportunities are also almost the same.
Even though we decided we were going to look at the sort of the kinds of corruption facing these small-scale traders, we see that higher level corruption, let's say larger scale farmers or people who want to take advantage, will ban small-scale traders from trading certain things and for a period of time make their profit. You can't just look at one level, and a lot of different forms of corruption intersect with each other.
What will make the reporting platform really work and people to continuously use it and report is when they can see action taking place. That again is a challenge for all of us on how we can get the data, but then also how the traders themselves can feel the impact.
Maisha ya kitu kidogo kwa ukweli sio fair. Kwa sababu kitu kidogo hiyo utazoea kitu kidogo mpaka lini? Ni mzuri tufanye biashara kwa uhaki. Maisha ya kitu kidogo inaangamisha hata nchi. Sababu hata ukienda kutafuta kazi mahali, biashara yako mahali, itabidi utumie kitu kidogo. Na hiyo kitu kidogo itatusaidia kama sisi wafanya biashara. Tutakuja karibu mahali pakubwa sana mpaka hata kizazi chetu cha kuja kuwa kijua kitu kidogo. Sasa kitu kidogo mimi naona kwa upande wangu sio fair kabisa. Nifanye tu biashara yangu, nipite kama vile walisema East Africa, niende nifanye biashara yangu kwa haki na nirudi kwa haki. Niwache hizi njia za kando kando, maana hata sinaharibu biashara sana. So mimi sikubaliani na vitu ya kitu kidogo.